Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into what I like to call the ultimate quality gate in software development. It's the unsung hero that can literally save your project from becoming an absolute expensive disaster. We are, of course, talking about mastering the requirements review. So if you have ever been part of a project that just completely went off the rails because of a simple misunderstanding, well, this explainer is going to show you exactly how to bulletproof your foundation before a single line of code is even written. Let's get into it. So, we start with what seems like an incredibly simple question. Have we got the right requirements? I mean, really ask yourself, do the documented requirements you're about to hand over to the development team actually represent what your stakeholders and end users truly need to succeed? Or are you just building a perfect version of the completely wrong system? It happens way more often than you think. Okay, let's unpack this core dilemma by looking at two fundamental questions that sound similar but are actually totally different. On one hand, we have we got the right requirements? This one is all about stakeholder alignment. Are we actually solving the right problem? But on the other hand, we have we got the requirements right? This focuses purely on the mechanics. Are they written correctly? Are they clear, complete, and testable? A truly successful review absolutely must answer both of these questions perfectly. We have a really packed explainer for you today, so here is the roadmap. 1. The foundation. 2. The scope and the cast. 3. The playbook. 4. The toolkit. And finally, number 5, the paperwork and optimization. Section 1. The foundation. Avoiding the catastrophe of poor requirements. Look, requirements are the incredibly fragile foundation of any software project. I mean, think about it. Every single design decision, every line of code, every testing strategy rests completely on them. Getting it wrong here, it inevitably leads to catastrophe. We're talking about building the entirely wrong system, dealing with massive budget overruns, constant scope conflicts, and ultimately, totally dissatisfied users. The thing to remember is this: catching a mistake right now costs pennies. Catching it after launch can literally cost millions. Moving on to Section 2, the scope and the cast, objectives, types, and participants. Now, it's important to realize that requirements aren't just one giant monolithic block of text. You've got business requirements that align with high-level company goals and functional requirements that dictate what the system actually does, which, by the way, directly feed into your test cases. Then you've got non-functional requirements, things like performance and security, and these drive your critical performance testing. You also have to review interfaces, regulatory compliance, user stories. You get the idea. The point is, each type requires a completely different lens when you're reviewing them. And when we do put those requirements under the microscope, what exactly are we looking for? Well, these are our core objectives. We're looking for crystal clear clarity and absolute completeness. But honestly, most importantly, we must enhance testability. If a QA tester cannot objectively verify a requirement, it has to be rewritten. Simple as that. We are also actively hunting for hidden dependencies, catching unrealistic technical expectations early on, and making sure there is strict traceability right back to the original stakeholder need. To pull all of that off, you really can't just have one person sitting in a room reading a document alone. Think of assembling your review participants kind of like putting together a crew for a heist, where everyone brings a highly specific, critical skill to the table. The business analyst is there to ensure documentation accuracy. The developer is checking technical feasibility. The architect is looking strictly at scalability. The QA engineer is demanding testability. And the domain expert, they're making sure the real-world business rules actually make sense. Everyone has a specific, vital job. Section 3, the playbook, the 3-stage execution process. So, how does the review actually happen? It unfolds chronologically in 3 major stages. First up is preparation. This means gathering the latest documents, assigning roles, and handing out checklists so everyone actually has time to read the material beforehand. Second is conducting the review. This is where you systematically evaluate everything and record the issues, and this is absolutely key, without placing any blame on the author. It's about the problem, not the person. And third, post-review actions. This is where we categorize those issues by severity, negotiate solutions, and finally distribute the newly approved baseline document. To manage this whole process like a pro, you need precise boundaries. You simply cannot start the review without meeting the entry criteria, meaning you've got a stable document and your reviewers are totally prepped with their checklists. And on the flip side, you absolutely cannot formally close the review until you meet the exit criteria. That means all critical issues are logged and resolved, and the new document is officially re-baselined. Let's jump into Section 4, the toolkit, practical methods, checklists, and common problems. Honestly, the absolute ultimate weapon in your toolkit is the checklist. Systematically using a checklist prevents your team from just relying on gut feeling, which, let's face it, is a terrible strategy. It forces you to actually check for understandability, like, can this be understood without the original author in the room explaining it? It forces you to explicitly look for missing alternative flows to ensure completeness. And it makes you hunt down conflicting rules across 50 different pages just to guarantee consistency. Let me show you what I mean. Contrast a terrible, unclear requirement like the system should respond quickly, which, by the way, is completely subjective, with a vastly improved one. The system shall display the search results within 2 seconds under normal operating conditions. See the difference? That second one is measurable, it's verifiable, and it is highly testable. Here's another one. Defining a vague term can actually eliminate massive technical risks down the road. Take this ambiguous AI requirement. The AI system should ask relevant questions. Dangerously ambiguous, right? What does relevant even mean? By improving it to say, the AI system shall generate interview questions based on the candidate's selected job category and information extracted from the uploaded CV, well, you've just mapped out the exact data dependencies your dev team needs to actually build the feature. Now, aside from your standard checklists, your toolkit should include diverse methods. You've got requirements testing and scenario-based reviews to help you walk through weird edge cases. Or, honestly, my favorite, perspective-based reading. This is brilliant. This is where a developer reads the doc purely looking for feasibility, while an end user simultaneously reads it purely checking for usability. It's a great strategy. You can also build interactive prototypes to validate concepts that are just, too complex to grasp from a text document alone. Of course, keep in mind that not every review needs to be some massive formal event. An informal walkthrough is fast, it's low cost, and it's absolutely great for early drafts. But if you are building a regulated, safety-critical system, yeah, you need a formal inspection. Sure, it costs more time, it requires intense individual preparation, and it generates very formal reports, but it gives you maximum control over high-risk requirements, which is exactly what you need. Finally, Section 5, the paperwork and optimization. Outputs, reports, and metrics. When the review finally wraps up, the most vital output is the review report, specifically how the issues you found are categorized by severity. Your stakeholders need to know exactly what to prioritize. A critical issue, that might tank the whole project. A major issue has to be corrected before you can get any sort of approval. Minor issues or observations, well, those can be handled later. Doing this prevents your entire team from getting bogged down arguing over a typo when, a core feature is fundamentally broken. Over time, you're going to want to measure if your review process is actually working. These specific metrics act as a report card for your process. Defect density tells you how many issues you have relative to the size of the document. But the most important one to pay attention to is defect leakage. This metric tells you exactly how many hidden defects manage to slip past your review and leak into the later, much more expensive development and testing stages. Okay, let's recap this entire journey end to end. You start with your draft and strict entry criteria. You distribute the materials so your crew can actually prepare. Then, you hold the meeting to identify issues. Again, not to assign blame. You classify the severity of those issues, revise the document, and finally, verify the fixes to establish your brand new, rock-solid baseline. So, it really all comes down to this. We've seen exactly how vague wording, unverified dependencies, and a lack of structured review can lead a team to build the absolute wrong system. The playbook is in your hands now. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. If a single missed requirement can completely derail an entire project, can you really afford to skip your next review? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.